Good morning. Welcome to Thoughts on the Book of Mormon with Ganel-Lyn. I am Ganel-Lyn, coming to you on a no school day, sleep in day, which means no makeup, hair's not done. Love it that we are good with each other just the way we are. Thank you for always being so kind with your messages and sharing with me the insights that you're coming with as you study the Book of Mormon, but your appreciation for any of the thoughts that I've shared that have helped you in some way. If you're joining me on IGTV, welcome. And if you're joining me on YouTube, welcome. I'm so grateful for technology that allows us to connect and study the Book of Mormon together. And for those of you that are following me on the Come Follow Me curriculum for the New Testament this year, I love that the Book of Mormon helps give us context for what we read in the Bible, and that it is a further witness of Christ. And it is a living, breathing scripture. So every time you read it, hopefully you're gathering something out of it. As we are finishing the first book of Nephi, yay, you made it through Nephi 1. We are going to be starting the second book of Nephi, but we are going to be discussing today 1 Nephi 22 and 2 Nephi 1. If you recall, this first book of Nephi, chapter 21, we just finished, was the Isaiah chapters. And I love that Laman and Lemuel have come to Nephi and said, we don't get it. We don't understand what you just said. And Nephi says to them right in the beginning of chapter 22, that as he had finished reading the engravings upon the plates of brass, right? This is their scripture. This is their Book of Mormon record, right? He says, my brother came unto me and said unto me, what meaneth these things which ye have read? Behold, are they to be understood according to things which are spiritual, which shall come to pass according to the Spirit and not the flesh? And Nephi says, and I, Nephi, said unto them, behold, they were manifest unto the prophet by the voice of the Spirit, for by the Spirit all things made known unto the prophets, which shall come upon the children of men according to the flesh. Wherefore the things of which I have read are things pertaining to things both temporal and spiritual. And so I think that's important to note context of here these brothers are struggling. They're struggling to understand and interpret the scriptures. And Nephi is saying to them, these are spiritual things that you need to understand, but they also represent temporal experiences that we're having. And I believe that everything is spiritual, and that includes temporal things. So as you do the dishes today or do the laundry today, that is a spiritual work that you're doing in your home, even though it's about the dishes and the laundry, right? And sometimes we lose sight of that everything is spiritual, even though we're having this very temporal experience, temporary, right? That root word of temporary. And this chapter goes on to really prophesy some of the destruction of the abominable church and the things that are going to happen, and how the house of Israel is scattered and hated, and the Gentiles will be ministers unto them. And I like to really interpret this to the restoration of the gospel here in Americas, and how that restoration allows for the Gentiles of here, even if you are adopted into the house of Israel or you have direct lineage because you've done a DNA test, this is a Gentile nation, will help minister to the gathering. And we can see that happening today for the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints being here, missionaries going out, the organization of the church here, and the gathering that is happening. I would even say with all of the genealogy records that are being produced, and companies and technology that is being produced here to create tools to allow us to do genealogy outside of the church, that is part of the gathering as well. And as we see, Satan's power to ensnare is always a great warning in the scriptures, because I think he often wants us to forget he's there. And in verse 15 it says, behold, saith the prophet, the time cometh speedily that Satan shall have no more power over the hearts of the children of men, for the day soon cometh that all the proud and they who do wickedly shall be as stubble, and the day cometh that they must be burned. So there will be a day, right, when we know that that 1,000 years in the millennium, that he will not have power. What does it mean to be shall be as stubble? So in fields, as you cut down all of the stalk up to right above the ground, and you harvest, or you cut down all of the the plants that are in this field, and all that is left is a little bit above, then oftentimes if you burn that and then you grind or rototill or plow in all of the roots into the ground as stubble, that little piece of the plant still left above ground is the stubble. But as you do that process of cutting it down and burning it, then you can plow that field and there's no record of what was there before. It's clean. And so what this promises is that the time soon cometh that the fullness of the wrath of God shall be poured out upon all the children of men, for he will not suffer that the wicked shall destroy the righteous. And I love this because this is a promise that we know in the last days before the second coming, the wicked will destroy the wicked in many ways, and that the church will roll forth. And I think it's confusing sometimes when we read about the wrath of God, because he is a loving God, but he is bound by laws. And as wickedness increases, those consequences roll forth. And he will fight for Zion, and he will protect. There's a great quote from Marky Peterson that I've written in my scriptures from 1960. It says this, and it's hard to read because I'm getting old and I wrote it in pencil years ago. I believe that in the midst of all of these tribulations in the last days, we're going to have a lot of them. And we're having them now. Let's just be honest. God will send fire from heaven, if necessary, to destroy our enemies while we carry forward our work and push that stone till it fills the whole earth. You do not need to fear about the world conditions or anybody. Just serve this and just serve the Lord, keep his commandments, and build the kingdom, and you will be protected. I love this promise. As we do the work of the Lord will do the fighting, and we will be protected. Now, as we go into second book of Nephi, this is where Lehi is about to say goodbye to his boys. His final teachings, his mercy and love for them is obvious, and he is trying to remind them of this vision of destruction and warning. He is prophesying of their curses that may come, and he is trying to say to them, remember how the Lord has warned us, and remember that the prophet Isaiah has warned us, but also see that your brother Nephi has spent this time since we've left Jerusalem working on his own conversion. Nephi's why was not to have power and lead you and be your ruler, but he is sharing in the birthright because he has chosen to follow the commandments and do the work that the Lord has commanded him to do. And so whether you're the firstborn or not, you, just like we have inherited, if we so choose, to be adopted by Christ, his birthright, Nephi is this son that is shown through his obedience to become the leader. And the boys are totally, resentful. And Lehi is saying, as he's dying, to please stop being rebellious. For how many hundreds of times has he said this? And he talks about how they may or may not have this happen, right? He says the word might 3 times and may not once. And I love that. It may or it may not. You may have a blessing or you may not. You may have the blessing if you are obedient, or you may not. You may have this curse or you may not. And so the Spirit of God is in Lehi as he's about to pass on. And he is boldly one more time asking and blessing his sons. He talks about Zoram, and I think of Zoram as like the Amalek for Alma, and Zoram was that for Nephi. And we know Zoram is righteous, and for a few generations his posterity is righteous, but in the end they are not. So I love these chapters of a father, who's giving counsel before he passes on, and he is reminding them of their missions, and he's asking them again to seek for the glory of God, to be obedient, to be righteous, so that you can be blessed. He's trying to teach one more time, and I think we as parents can relate to that. And this is where the scriptures for me become very personal. And I hope you've gathered something from this discussion today. Thanks for joining me.